darkness got to kill.
Hi everybody, back in the garage, day 14. 12. Day 14, quarantine history. Two things real fast. I put an assignment up for you from yesterday about the Missouri Compromise. If you have any questions, let me know. That the chart that I went over is important. You're going to have to replicate that thing on the test. And then you have the homework there. This whole thing is, you know, it's a temporary solution to a bigger question. But you know, I think I told you one day in class, you can only compromise so many times before there's nothing left to give anymore. The saving grace here is that the land's going to be added. We don't really need these notes here because we've already gone over that. I want to make this relatively short today. I have two things I want you to watch that are in your resource file. One of those things is the Missouri Compromise Explained. The other one, and like I said, the links are on your resource page inside the folder. The other one is the corrupt bargain, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. Real quick, I told you Henry Clay, Missouri Compromise, came up with it. Henry Clay wants to be president more than anything in the whole entire world. After the Missouri Compromise is over, Henry Clay's solution to kind of making everyone get along a little bit better was internal improvements to the United States. Henry Clay wants to have Congress pass a tariff, which is a tax on imports. That tariff will bring money to the federal government. His idea is to spend that money on building better roads and eventually better trains and better canals, but it was roads and canals at the time. The idea with Henry Clay's internal improvements was this: if we can put canals and roads in, and we talked about this during the transportation revolution, if we can make the country smaller and make the country more dependent on everybody, then we'll be less likely to fight each other because you need me and I need you. Ultimately, the tariff was passed, the money wasn't used for that, and his idea kind of goes out the window, but at least he made an attempt. The thing I want to talk to you about today more than anything else is the election of 1824. I know I brought this up to you in class. Andrew Jackson, and we'll talk about more on Monday, Andrew Jackson had two regrets in life, he said. Number one, I didn't shoot John Quincy Adams, and number two, I didn't hang John C. Calhoun. And so here's the explanation to why he wanted to shoot John Quincy Adams. In 1824, the election, it's still the era of good feelings. Everybody's still Democratic Republicans. You have a bunch of guys running, including Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, and Henry Clay. When the Electoral College vote comes in, those three guys have no one has a majority, and those three guys have the most votes. And so when no one gets a majority in the Electoral College, and this has happened before to us already too with Thomas Jefferson, when no one gets a majority, it's the House of Representatives who gets to choose who the president is going to be. That being the case, Andrew Jackson, number one, had more popular votes than any of the other candidates, and he had more Electoral College votes than any of the other candidates, but he didn't have a majority. And seeing how the popular vote does not determine the president, the Electoral College does, and no one got a majority, this thing was kicked into the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is going to elect John Quincy Adams to become president. And this thing becomes known as the corrupt bargain. Essentially, what happened was the House of Representatives votes, and there's no majority winner. Andrew Jackson is getting more votes than anybody else, but he's not getting enough there. He's not getting majority. And so this goes on for a day, I assume, or whatever the case may be. And then the next day when they come back, everyone who had voted for Henry Clay all of a sudden votes for John Quincy Adams. And John Quincy Adams is awarded the presidency. And the funny thing is, the odd thing about the whole thing is, John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay really didn't get along. They didn't get along. They didn't like each other. Henry Clay was from Kentucky. John Quincy Adams was from Massachusetts. They were from different worlds. They weren't particularly friendly. They didn't think that highly of each other. Most Northerners didn't think a whole lot of Westerners being poor and etc., whatever the case may be at the time, uneducated, etc., etc. And it was strange because out of the blue, here comes John Quincy Adams, gets all Henry Clay's votes, and people had a really hard time figuring out what in the world had happened. Well, as the story goes, and like I said, there's a clip I want you to watch. As the story goes, Henry Clay was invited to John Quincy Adams' home. And John Quincy Adams writes about this meeting that they met, and but doesn't write anything about what was discussed. And so that's kind of a telltale right there. This obviously was stuff that was found out way later after John Quincy Adams' death. But here's the part that tipped everybody off. When John Quincy Adams becomes president, John Quincy Adams names Henry Clay the Secretary of State, which is the most important of all the executive departments. It's the most important. It's the president, besides the vice president, it's the president's right-hand guy. It's the guy who travels the world and gives the president advice on foreign affairs. Why would John Quincy Adams pick a guy to be Secretary of State that he didn't even really like? Well, when you start looking at past Secretaries of States, you start to figure it out. George Washington, his Secretary of State was Thomas Jefferson. John Adams, Secretary of State was John Marshall. The pattern doesn't fit there. But then you start to see it. Thomas Jefferson, who was Secretary of State, becomes the third president. His Secretary of State is James Madison. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison. Madison becomes president. His Secretary of State, James Monroe. James Monroe becomes president. His Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams' Secretary of State becomes president, names Henry Clay Secretary of State. And so, what happened? What was discussed at this meeting that John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay had? We don't know for sure, but most people assume, because like I said, they didn't like each other, most people assume, and it kind of looks this way, that Henry Clay went to John Quincy Adams and told him, if you make me Secretary of State, I'll get all the people who voted for me tomorrow to vote for you. That will give you a majority, and you'll be named the next President of the United States. And that's exactly sort of what happened. The next day, the next vote, John Quincy Adams wins. All the Henry Clay people vote for John Quincy Adams. And there's Andrew Jackson. Got more electoral college votes, got more popular votes, and he loses in the House. And that is the reason why. Some of his last words, I wished I would have shot John Quincy Adams. Because as far as he was concerned, the presidency was stolen from him. He'll wait 4 years, and he'll make sure the next time he doesn't lose. Hey, do me a favor, watch those 2 clips. It's like 20 minutes or so. Missouri Compromise Explained. It'll help you out, give you something else. And The Corrupt Bargain should help you out too. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. We're in this for the long haul. It's unfortunate, it's the way it is, but we gotta finish the game. And so I need you to commit. I need you to kind of do the right thing and follow along. I'm doing the best I can. Hope you're all well. Have a good weekend. I'll see you on Monday.
One way or another, one way or another, this darkness got to kill.